Good evening, guys. Really glad to be with you again tonight. We're on day 1, step 7. Moving along on the first step. Got 3 more days, we'll be on step 2. So I'm going to open once again with the Serenity Prayer. And as you get to know this, you'll become more comfortable. You can pray along with me if you like. And it's basically, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever and ever in the next. Amen. Also in our 12 steps, I always like to read them just so you get familiar with them, and hopefully you'll be able to recite them right off at some point and knowing what they are. So again, step 1, I admit that I am powerless over the problem controlling my life. Step 2, I acknowledge that my belief that God, the source of all power, will restore me to sanity and sobriety. That's a great hope. Step 3, I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as He instructs me. So just as you learn, as you're able to respond, there's no pressure, just you respond as you will. That's clearly what that's saying there, as He instructs me. Step 4, I determine to work with God to make a daily inspection of my character, letting Him look into the inside almost with a flashlight, so to speak, and uncover the hidden areas of darkness. Step 5, I admit the exact nature of my character defects to God, myself, and eventually to another person, which is going to really free you in so many ways when you're ready. I am ready to let God remove all my character defects. Step 7, I humbly ask God to place positive character qualities in me. Step 8, I make a list of all the people I've harmed and become willing to make amends. Instead of running, I become willing to make amends. That's going to be so freeing. Step 9, I make sincere amends to the people I've harmed and forgive those who have harmed me. Step 10, I continue to practice daily what I've learned. Step 11, I seek to strengthen my relationship with God through prayer and meditation. And then step 12, I determine to take this message of God's peace and freedom to others. And that's the exciting part, when we can take out to others the things we're learning. And I encourage you, as you're learning, share with your friends, share with your family. It's going to encourage them to see the path you've chosen. I'm telling you, more than you know, you're going to be such an inspiration and encouragement. Those that have been worried about you and concerned about you, recognize they may have harped at you at times, but they love you. They care about you, and they're so glad to see you tuned in here. And I'm glad. I want to tell you, I'm glad. I haven't met you yet, but I hope that one day we can meet. I look forward to that. One day, if you'd like to, send me your mailing address. I could send you a copy of my own personal story, Like Father, Like Son. This is a story about how, with the family I grew up in, how I ended up, as I shared in my first testimony, in prison in and out several times, and finally had an encounter with the Lord while I was in prison that turned my life around. It made me want to give back. So this is my way of giving back, keeping me out of trouble. I've chosen to get busy in life, doing better things than I used to, and I feel better at night, and I like what I'm doing. And I like that I can be here to encourage you along your path. And my hope is that you'll one day do this for others. And maybe as you're going on a little further in it, you'll open up your home to a couple of friends that you can help. And that'd be a glorious, glorious way to pour out your life back into your community. So today is lesson 1, step 7. And I admit again that I'm powerless over, and let's be very honest, whatever it is, let's just get used to saying it. The more you say it, you're just opening a door to finally get the help that you need. And it's going to be exciting as you see yourself moving forward. I admit that I'm powerless over, and it is controlling my life. We're not making excuses anymore for it. It is controlling my life, and it's going to come to an end. You're halfway there now by acknowledging it. Unfortunately, it is possible to have a dependency on alcohol, drugs, or cigarettes, or a problem with gambling, codependency, eating disorders, and other life-controlling problems without immediate, noticeable physical or emotional damage. This encourages a false sense of security that will have devastating consequences. And probably if you're tuned into this tonight, you're recognizing that in the beginning, some of this may have been fun. Like we first started off, drinking, smoking at school and having a few drinks. We'd laugh and goof off, and but then all of a sudden we start finding ourselves wanting it more and more. It gives us a false sense of a high we get, euphoria, And I believe the reason we look for that kind of euphoria and like it is because we were created to be filled up with a joy and a peace and a purpose in life. And when we don't have that, we're always looking to fill the hole. And I know you can relate to me that I always felt like there was a hole inside that I just couldn't fill in anything I touched. You know, for a little while it was okay to do this and that, and I experimented with drugs as a young boy, and it just seemed fun for a while. And then it wasn't after a while. There was a certain point where it really wasn't. I'd go out, I knew I was going to get into trouble. I knew I'd started stealing and lying to people to get money and covering up my tracks and telling lies to the people that I love. And, you know, eventually you tell so many lies you don't even remember which ones you told. Or even worse, you start believing the lies that you're telling because we're making excuses for everything, and our whole life becomes a lie. And then we start not liking who we are. And the more we hear it coming out of our mouth, we begin to convince ourselves that it's true so we can feel better about ourselves. But deep inside, we know something's wrong. And I hope you're here because of that. And just that that's happening to you tells me, from my perspective, that God, who you may have acknowledged yet or not, it's okay whether you do or not, I'm just glad you're here. But at some point through this course, I hope you have an encounter with him. And he is the way, the truth, and the life. And I hope you have an encounter with the truth. And he can give you a new identity, a new start, new friendships, and as you're ready. So there's never any pressure. I didn't like being pressured when I was a kid into spiritual things, and I hope I never come across that way to you. I will share with you what's worked for me, what's worked for others. But when you're ready to own it in your own self, then you'll make it happen, and you'll have a joy. And you'll be telling people, and you'll be shocked at what's coming out of your own mouth when you start seeing these changes. It's crazy. It's incredible. And I'm just so glad to be on this journey. I've been 40 years on this journey this year, and I'm not looking back. I found something, and I'm sticking with it. So I want to get rid of that false security. But you'll notice in the explanation here that the dependency can be anything: alcohol, drugs, cigarette smoking, gambling, codependency, depending on people for your value. You always got to be with somebody. Can't stand being alone. Eating disorders, other life-controlling problems. So you mark in there what that is. And but in the beginning, we don't see the immediate noticeable physical or emotional damage, but we do as the years go by. Would you agree with that? You know, eventually we start saying something's wrong with this approach. So here's an example. Cocaine was Jim's handle on a successful management position. It made him feel assertive, alert, and in control initially. As long as he had his coke, Jim stayed full of energy during his long work days and evenings at the fitness center. His salary made cocaine affordable, and his source was discreet and readily available. Jim's wife and children were not aware of his drug use, but they were fearful of his mood swings and increasingly violent temper. They would have known something was off. They saw something changing, didn't know that he'd be using drugs. Nobody wants to think their dad is using drugs, or if you're a wife, you don't want to think that. But we begin to cover it up, but people see the effects of it. They really do. Jim's wife and children were not aware of his drug use, but they were fearful of his mood swings and increasingly violent temper. Jim's sexual demands became sadistic. He had little patience with his children, and he suffered anxiety attacks if his cocaine was not within reach. Can you relate to that, where you just all of a sudden you're desperate to get it, and you're cranky, you're irritable, and other people pay the price for the choices we're making? At work, Jim mistakenly thought that his performance had improved. In truth, his performance was inconsistent, and to his colleagues, he appeared tense and easily agitated. Jim refused to admit his addiction until his wife and children left him, and his job was in jeopardy. He paid a high price for his self-deception. In the beginning, drugs may seem helpful. They can quickly relieve depression and emotional pain, remember, in the beginning, giving a feeling of self-control or power. However, drugs soon begin to take more than they give, and control is quickly lost. You become forced on always having enough of your drug of choice to meet your physical and emotional demands. You never planned to get addicted. You'd convinced yourself you could quit anytime you wanted. Can you relate to Jim's story? You know, his was with cocaine. It made him more successful, better at what he did for a season. But then the spiral starts for all of us. Guys, the spiral starts for anybody that goes down that path, because it's not a real, legitimate way of life. It's a deception right from the beginning. It brings us into a different type of a feeling, so we don't feel our pain, we don't feel our inadequacy, we don't feel the weight of trying to provide for a family or facing conflict. You know, for me growing up, I didn't like to face conflict. And so when I wasn't drinking, I was very quiet and reserved in many ways. But things would build up and build up and build up. And what I found happened, the nice guy that I thought I was, or people thought I was when I wasn't drinking, they just thought I was quiet. But when I would get drinking, I'd be okay for a little bit. And then that line got crossed and I'd become angry and, fighting and arguing. What are you looking at? And, just different things. It was terrible. But I always thought it was other people, And so it quickly got a hold of me. The drinking got a hold of me, it sedated, but I wanted to break free from it and try it again and again and again. And I just couldn't seem to stop. I'd end up in jail, on a stupid charge in the beginning, taking a car. My uncle's girlfriend's car, I just took it and went downtown, cruising around, and I got charged and ended up in the Don jail. And that was a fearful place. I ended up in trouble, and I'm like, God, if you ever get me out of here, I won't come back here again, And I got out, and didn't I go right back to doing what I was doing? Months later, back in again, and in and out, and I hated the lifestyle, so I'm never going to go back there, But I just couldn't seem to break away from it. And the worst part about it is, the deeper we get into that lifestyle, the more friends we attract in that same mindset. So within a very short period of time, almost all of our network that we relate to is the same as we are. Would you agree with that? You look around at your friendship base, and they're all people that are used and abused, and we're surrounded by dealers. We know where to go when we're desperate, and that's not good for those of us that are struggling. And especially if it's pornography or stuff like that today, it comes right up on your phone in private. I remember years ago, I was just learning to use the internet a little bit, and I started doing it for the work I do at Harvest House, and all of a sudden these pop-ups started coming, sexual pop-ups that I'd never seen before, and I didn't know what was going on. And my wife had seen it on the computer, and she started to wonder, am I tapping into something and it's coming back? Because that stuff draws stuff to you if you start using it. Anyway, I told Rose, I don't know where that's coming from, but it's not me. And I think she kind of knew that in her heart, but it made her question, I think. And so finally, she asked one of our boarders, a new boarder that we saw on the computer late at night. And fortunately, for me anyway, this guy admitted. He said, yes, Rose, I've been accessing the computer, and I'm so sorry. And he started dabbling in some sites. But what happened when he started dabbling in those sites, all of a sudden it started coming to you. And I don't know how that works, but it's like there's a scripture that says deep calls unto deep. And if we're growing deeper, we draw that around us. But if you're getting sneaky and going into the computer, it'll draw stuff to you. So it's coming at you all the time. There's stuff in the computer set up that what you're searching for will draw back to you. And I forget the name, the algorithms, I think it's called. And so if that's happening to you, you want to cut that off quick. And if you have a hard time with it, you may need to get an accountability partner. And you don't want to ruin your marriage, and you don't want to ruin your wife's trust in you, or your husband's trust in you, or your family. Your kids never knew you were accessing that. And then you're going to get into the porn, which is live video stuff and chats and stuff. That's dangerous stuff. Flee from that. The last thing I would want is my daughters to ever think, here's what dad's doing on the computer, And so if you have been, I had to repent of pornography when I was younger. As a young man, I began to get into pornography years and years ago. And that gets into bad stuff, just the, imaginations and how I got seduced into all kinds of things. And when I came to the Lord, he showed me the wrongness of that. And so I repented of it. I said, God, forgive me for all this stuff. And he showed me that the women that he created on the earth were his daughters. God created women to be loved and cherished, not to be lusted over and have all these things going on. And then it makes us unfaithful in our marriages. And you look at how many marriages are breaking up today. And I believe because there's a lot of secrets that are kept in a marriage that don't come out, and eventually people part because they're no longer able to cleave together. And when you turn your heart over to the Lord's ways and start working a problem, you're going to be cleaving with the person you love, because the qualities in you are going to gravitate towards your loved one. And so if you're having some marriage issues today, I want to ask you, are you entertaining any issues of pornography or porn in any kind of way? And I appeal to you as a brother, please repent of that, write it down, do it quietly if somebody's with you. You just acknowledge it. I'm going to deal with this. And just tell God, I'm sorry, Lord, for entering into that. I don't want to go into imaginations that's going to ruin a really good quality relationship with a woman of integrity or a man of integrity. So that's, I'm expressing that tonight. I really felt that on my heart because I know it's a struggle that's hard to talk about, but it's a real addiction. It's a real seduction, and it will ruin your future relationships. It'll ruin how you feel about yourself when you're with your mate, and all kinds of other stuff's going on in your head. It's the same. It's worse than adultery because it's not even with a real person. It's with a fantasy in your mind, and that needs to go. Get rid of it, and you'll be able to enjoy, once again, in time, a real interactive relationship. Build on that relationship. Work out the conflicts in your marriage and in your relationship, and you'll be glad you did. You really, really will. Okay, So in the beginning, drugs may seem helpful. They can quickly relieve depression and emotional pain, giving a feeling of self-control. However, they'll soon cost you more than you want to pay. Drugs, drinking, any kind of an addiction will soon take more from you and give less back to you until you lose everything. And some of you may have had that happen now, where you've lost everything or you're about to lose everything. Maybe some of you are facing court, because you did some foolish things while you were drinking. You get this help going on daily. Let someone become accountable to somebody. And then when you face court, you say, Your Honor, I am dealing with an addiction. I'm not able to get to a program because I'm working or I have a family, but I'm doing it 6 nights a week with a fellow who has been in addictions, Cal from Harvest House, that runs addiction recovery programs in our community. I'm in touch with other community programs like Teen Challenge and Village of Hope and the Naomi and Ruth for women. And we help people that need to come to a 9-month program because they can't do it in the format you're doing. And if you can't do it in the way we're doing tonight, you may need to look at a 9-month program to save your life or save your marriage or save your family. But if you can do it with this support, and if you follow through everything we're learning from here, I believe you can do it right from where you are. But you're going to need someone to be your sponsor, someone to walk this through with you. And invite someone at some point when you're ready. Invite someone that you trust, or maybe someone that pointed you to this online, and say, look, would you just ask me every few days how I'm doing? And that's going to help you a lot, because you're not going to want to go back to them and say, oh, I'm messing up. But you got to be honest. If you have a relapse, you got to admit it, because you won't want to keep on admitting that you've relapsed. So that's going to be the accountability that you might need. And so as we go on in this, I am going to be pointing out the importance of having a sponsor, or we call them accountability partners, whatever you need, but we talk about fellowshipping up. Learn to fellowship and relate with people that are further down the road than you. They can come out of addictions, but they need to be clean for a season to be an accountability partner. Don't go to someone who's weak like you are, because one day you're going to go to them and they're going to be weak and they're going to say, you know what, me too, and off you go, and you spiral down together. So you got to choose someone that's down the road a little further. They're not better than you are, but they're just operating with a little bit of consistency in their life. And in these programs, you're taught to become an accountability partner at some point. As you gain some momentum and you're 6 months clean, you're going to be able to be an accountability for someone else, just to ask them how they're doing, because you'll know the process and you'll be the best friend they could have. But you got to be straight with them. You can't pamper them. Pampering someone doesn't help conquer an addiction. You need to be told straight. You need to get through this. Do not blame others. Would you agree? As long as we enable people to blame somebody else, we are not helping them. People need real love, but real love is tough love because it tells the truth. And so I'm going to be asking you in the near future to look for someone to be accountable to. And then down the road a little further, when you're ready, and there's going to be some groups forming, because I'm encouraging people that I know and people that contact me through this to open up their home to a few people, and just maybe once a week. You could watch this online, whatever day it is, and then just talk afterward and have fellowship. How's it going? How you making out with your studies, with your homework? And then you can have someone to really talk to that understands where you're at. Everybody needs someone to at least relate with where they're at in their journey, and someone to be proud of you. And so if you're taking steps, if you're clean for whatever days you are right now, I want to say, if you haven't had anybody else say it, I'm proud of you for the step that you're taking. And I mean that. I'm really proud of you for the step that you're taking. One day can turn into a week. A week can turn into a month. A month can turn into 9 months, and all of a sudden, a year. And you say, I've been clean for a year, and you're going to celebrate that. It's going to be a great milestone. And you're building some memories along the way that's going to be helpful to you. Okay. So here's the verse today. He says, for sin, the self-centered nature, remember the thing that feeds it, sin in us, taking opportunity through the commandment, deceived me, and through it killed me. There's a sin nature that you were born with. From the time Adam departed from God in the garden, the Bible tells us all of us were born with sin in our nature. You don't become a sinner because you sinned. You sin because you were born a sinner. Does that make sense? There's a big difference if you get that. You're not a sinner because you sin. You sin because you were a sinner, and you have the nature of sin, the nature to do wrong. You don't have to teach a child to be selfish. You don't have to teach a child to do wrong. You got to teach them to do right. Would you agree? It's just we sin because we're sinners. So let some of the guilt be removed. You still need to own your choices, but the reason you made those choices is you had the propensity to make wrong choices right from the get-go. And so we're here to learn through the power of our higher power, our source, God, to help us through this. Write this verse on a small card once again. Keep it with you through the day. Read it often. Think about what it says and challenge yourself to memorize it. By the way, the last verse was Romans 7:11. If you want to write that down and look it up afterward. The memory verse for today is, do you not know that when you present yourselves to someone as slaves for obedience, you are slaves of the one whom you obey, either of sin resulting in death or of obedience leading to righteousness. So whatever you surrender to, that's going to become your master, right? And this is Romans 6, verse 16. The book of Romans 6, verse 16. Mark that down. And then just go over it. Write it down on a little card. Get these little 3x5 cards. Write down your verse every day. And just look at that. When you're lonely through the day or you're starting to think foolish, here's my memory verse. And you watch how it'll just steer you back into something positive. So the first one was Romans 7:11. Second one is Romans 6:16. Mark this down again. This is the most important part of the day. Today, I will make right choices and regain control of my life. So you're writing it down. Today, I will make right choices and regain control of my life. Date it and sign it. Sign your name. This is your 24-hour contract with God, with you, and with me. And so I'm going to ask you how you're doing. So how are you doing with the contracts you're doing? Are you staying clean for that 24-hour period? If you are, congratulations. If you're not, get up and start. So that's my encouragement to you. So meditate on these verses today. There wasn't much homework other than what we did in the program, but you can just think on it, talk. And like I said, if you need a book, get in touch with me and I'll help to get a book out to you. And they're really helpful. It's the best investment you'll make. You spend a lot more on drinking and drugs and other things. $20 for a book and postage, it'd be the best decision you made in a long time. So God bless you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.